Hello, everyone. We're going to start out today's episode of Contested by first taking a look at the case of the missing Decay, and then followed up by taking a look at the Valiant and Mayhem matchup.
After that, we're going to be continuing to look at the games from past weekend, looking at the Charge and the Spark, and then we also got experimental patch notes coming out, and we'll discuss those and the changes that Blizzard is putting on us next.
I'm Avast. This is Jayne.
Hello.
And welcome back to Contested. Hello, everyone. Once again, we are live now, finally live from the Frontier Communication Studio here in Dallas, Texas. It's been a long time since we have been live from here. In many ways, you could say we have not been living without the Frontier Communication Studio in Dallas, Texas. But we're back.
I'm personally just happy to be completely out of my kitchen, but now there becomes more challenges because we're using multi-camera setups. So production value through the roof, but we're still live. So even though we are back in the studio, if you're watching on Twitch, YouTube, or Twitter, we are still live. We can still see you in the chat. But so yeah, if you watched it all the way back from the OG days, those days were pre-recorded. But even though we're back in the studio and out of my kitchen, finally, we are still live. So welcome to your Tuesday episode of Contested.
I will miss the sounds of your dog in the kitchen. I'll miss the sounds of just your kitchen in general.
Yeah.
It feels like I was in an atmospheric movie, like I was in Chef. And every day I'd tune in and be like, there's another day with Jayne's kitchen here.
Just periodically have my dog Theo just steal a squeaky toy and go crazy. So yeah, no, we actually get to be pretending, role-playing as professionals now that we're back in the studio. But before we get into any of the crazy stuff, of which there is a lot of crazy stuff, let's do our favor 60-second recap.
Let's hear it.
This weekend, there was a lot of action, especially in the Asian region. Now, both the Guangzhou Charge as well as the Hangzhou Spark had 2 games this weekend. The Hangzhou Spark came out on top, winning 2 of the games, and that's going to catapult them up to 5th place in the standing. Very consistent performances from Krong, as well as a pop-off performance throughout the weekend from Happy, cemented those victories. The Spark, however, despite losing to the Guangzhou Charge, they did pick up a 5-game win in their other series against the New York Excelsior. So despite the New York Excelsior's increase in their roster and me going pretty high on their potential, they did fall short. However, the New York Excelsior also picked up a rather easy win at 3-1 against the London Spitfire to make sure that they cement and maintain their 4th place position. More excitement on the North American side of the bracket. You're going to be looking to the great game between the Los Angeles Valiant and the Florida Mayhem, of which we will talk more later in the episode. But along with new news that we've got from the Los Angeles Valiant, they took that map 3-1, so a pretty decisive factor. And the final piece of news, which I'll cover just briefly, because I'm sure we're going to cover it lots in the episode, was the Vancouver Titans and the Dallas Fuel. And if you have, for some reason, just not seen the absolute ridiculous fallout from that match, the Vancouver Titans picked up their first win with the new roster, going 3-0 against the Dallas Fuel. Now, Decay, of course, did not play during that match. They had Onigod playing instead. But I don't think that excuses what result we saw. So more on the Valiant, the Mayhem, as well as what's going on with the Dallas Fuel in this episode. But that has been your favorite 60-second recap.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Beautiful.
I did that one without a script that time.
I know. That was really nice. I like that a lot. And chat, yes, I am shiny. I'm a shiny man. Okay? It's just how I am. You have to remember that in our opening cinematic, I would say as part of the contested cinematic universe, I did run to the office to get in, and thus this is just the residual sweat.
He does that every day. It's not just It's not just once. It's not just for show. Literally every single day, he has to run to the office in full attire, just like that.
It is. It's very, very, I don't know, stifling for myself, but it's just something I have to do because it's part of my lore now. Mm-hmm. And when I start my comic book series, that's going to be my background. I must run to any office that I work at.
Do I get to be part of the contestants?
You can. Okay. You can be watching me run. Yeah, that's really you're gonna be the watcher.
We'll have to decide what my superpower is later. But where do we want to start? Because we're gonna have to. We had our run of show, and then while we were getting ready to go live, we had a whole bunch of things. So do we want to start with the contenders changes that just got announced?
I mean, the hottest off the press, fresh from the oven, that I hot potato around, I take it out and I burn myself, is the contenders news.
Yes.
We have a whole big revamping of the path to pro. Is it even? And well, it is named the Path to Pro. Sometimes people think that it's the path to poverty at points, but it is. They have released some pretty big changes, rumors, some rumblings that I've heard about before this, anyways, and they've sort of put out their first iteration of them. And if you guys haven't seen them, it is very pertinent to you now, especially if you're looking to be a contenders player or get into the open division system, because they didn't really announce what they're doing in open division, but pretty much they are restructuring everything. Just restructuring it all. They are reorganizing
everything you know about contenders and just throw it out the window, because the chances of you knowing what's going on now, going forward, is pretty low, especially because they're actually going to be changing the format. There's not any sort of unified format throughout the different regions, so some regions are going to be doing tournament.
Pacific isn't even there anymore.
Yeah, Pacific just doesn't exist. That's a thing. Pacific region, gone, peace. But yeah, regions like the Australian region are going to be going into a full-style tournament system. There's some regions that are going to be doing hybrid, and others that are going to be doing the league format as well. So it's going to be, if you're a fan of a specific region, or if you're a hardcore viewer who likes to watch all of the different contenders regions, well, first of all, that's impressive, and second of all, it's probably going to be a little bit more confusing to follow each of the different regions.
That is, I mean, it does bring up the issue of continuity again, because when I tune in and I realize that APAC is likely not even going to have any sort of really direct Blizzard run things, it's going to be, sounds like they're handing off the control to like third-party TOs, and then I tune over and I see NA is still in the tournament style system, but in a revamped tournament style system, and then I go to China and South Korea, and it's like, we're still in a league format. Well, actually, no, China, they're staying the same as what it was this year. South Korea, though, is staying to a league format. And I believe they also changed it to, like, South America is like this hybrid league format / tournament style.
It's weird.
And Australia is back to a league format, or staying, it's a lot of interesting differences, which isn't necessarily wrong, right? Because I actually think that certain regions have certain advantages to being run certain ways.
Yes.
And for things like APAC, and I've been of the opinion as well, which doesn't necessarily garner me any favor amongst those that are part of the Tier 2. We must support Tier 2 at all costs. We must give our blood and plasma and bone marrow, everything for Tier 2. Everything must go. But I do think that certain regions have to be restructured and even shuttered and given over to some more greater control, like APAC, how they're doing, and putting it over to like a third-party or like tournament organizer. I actually think that idea is not bad. And I think if we take those resources and put them into other bigger regions, we can have much more impact than spreading like all of our if we have $1 million and we spread it over the entire world as opposed to spreading it one place, it will be, or 2 to 3 places, it's a lot more impactful in how it affects them.
Yeah, and I think that you're definitely having it where, and it was like they put in $3 million a year. It wasn't just $1 million.
Yeah.
They did put in a lot of money, and they didn't really have the same results. But I really like the fact that they are giving more ownership to the actual tournament organizers. That is what TO means, if you're not familiar with the term, to run more of these events and productions. Hopefully, if you are giving these third-party organizations, which are part of the Overwatch, the esports ecosystem, they're going to have more agency over making sure that those events are well-run and fun to watch. So hopefully it actually drives viewership. And I very much view this along the same lines as what you kind of see with the hero pool changes. This is, I don't know how many iterations of the contender system that we've seen at this point.
I don't think they even said anything about hero pools are going to work, by the way.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly how the hero pool rules could be different from region to region now, too.
Yep.
So it's just getting increasingly complex.
It's increasingly complex in terms of like the whole ecosystem. How, if you're trying to view it as like, I'm trying to understand the entire thing, but hopefully, it won't be any more complicated for the people who stick within one region. Yeah. It's just like, it is good that Blizzard is paying attention to this. They're making changes. I think they're, they haven't hit a home run out of the park or anything, but they are making improvements. And from what I've heard and what you've heard, the Overwatch esports team has been talking to quite a few people for feedback. So I don't think this is something that they've just invented in a vacuum and just came up with completely on their own. It sounds like they've been soliciting feedback and have gotten some, and hopefully this is what both players, TOs, and fans actually want to watch.
And the really interesting part about that, too, is that not just that we are entered into this restructuring of contenders, and we are clearly in like a feedback gathering stage for Blizzard, but specifically on the North American and European segment, little bullet point of their release that they don't really talk about anywhere else, is we recognize that being a professional is more than being a skilled competitor, and we plan to ramp up a variety of educational sessions each month aimed at preparing our players to be successful teammates, entertainers, brand ambassadors, and more. So, and they're planning to share news about these programs later. So to me, that sounds like they want to release like almost like a player summit type of thing, but for contenders. But it doesn't sound like it's going to be in place from the other regions, or it might just be an NA and European thing. I don't know if that's just an oversight necessarily, or if they've just forgotten about that, or I don't know. But it's interesting to say the least, because it implies that they want to build a more robust structure from the ground up and give some sort of media training from the ground up for contenders.
I'm suspicious. I'm really suspicious when I hear that. Now, that's new. I don't know any more detail or anything like that, but at least coming from the Overwatch League, when we went through, you had the PR training and things of that variety, and especially when you're looking at what happened, there have been multiple bad press events, I think is the nice way to put that, around contenders, which you could probably just say, like the Ellie situation with Second Wind. There's a lot of times that the contenders ecosystem has also brought Blizzard probably as much bad press or just, unfortunate happenstances than the good that it is actually meant to create. So they might kind of have this reading as, we're going to do this in order to benefit the players and themselves. But a part of me probably thinks that the main motivation for Blizzard is probably just to make sure that the players get some sort of PR training, or at least they have kind of, if a person goes completely off the rails, it's like,
How to not mauled from Reddit comments 101.
Yeah.
That's how someone from Pearly Gates in chat. I mean, but it does also begs the question of, like, to what extent can you invest? Like, what does the investment mean here, right? If we're restructuring, because recently, in unrelated Overwatch news, let me just bring an example of Mixer exploded. Mixer exploded under the weight of its contractual obligations, in my personal opinion. They essentially gave contracts so big that it forced it into almost insolvency on top of the fact of, like, the big, and they had to go. But that's how I feel about contenders, of, like, we have, like, a budget. And I know, as someone that's worked in contenders, there's sort of a budget there. And there's really only two options. We either can accept that there's a budget and we're not going to get the return on the budget at contenders, and we try to limit our losses, or we strategically use our resources and up them a little bit to recognize that contenders will never be profitable, which it won't.
Yeah.
It won't.
It won't be.
It will never be. Anyone that thinks that contenders will be profitable will be wrong. The only way it will ever be profitable is if we cut everything. If we cut it all down to the bone, there's like one casting pair for every region on Earth. They are going to have one microphone that they share, and they're going to have one laptop, and that is going to be Then maybe.
And stolen Wi-Fi from McDonald's.
Of course, stolen Wi-Fi, never subbed. That's just what it's going to be. But I do think that it's an interesting move for them, because if they're going to start investing in educational programs, what does that mean from, like, a resource standpoint for contenders,
that's
right?
What I'm saying.
Something already stretched thin.
If you're viewing this as a business perspective, this isn't something where, like, contenders is not in a situation where they have this giant surplus. They have a lot of overhead that they can do all these very nice things. I would assume that this is, if you're giving a person PR training, first of all, you're negating the likelihood, however small that may be, of people making really bad faux pas in public. Things that could discourage sponsors. In the same way where if you're actually giving these individuals who are people who are very good at playing video games, they may not be the greatest at camera, they may not be greatest at public speaking or giving interviews, giving those players that kind of training also increases their value to a sponsor or an advertiser. So it's a combination. To me, it is very much a business case. It doesn't seem to be something that they're doing out of the goodness of their heart. Businesses don't have hearts. They don't operate that way. So it's going to be a mix of reducing as much of their liability from having these people affiliated with them and saying dumb things, and just making them more valuable and useful to sponsors and advertisers.
Yeah, I just wonder what to the, like, it's always like, it's great to have these initiatives. Just what does it mean? And, like, because you could tell me we're having an educational program and all this stuff, but, like, if it's just very bare bones, then all it does is waste people's time and waste some money, right? Like, you actually have to invest into it and want to have it succeed and really have a purpose.
Yeah.
Or else it's sort of just like we're throwing it at the wall, and then we've built this big structure and we're going to leave it. It's going to be like some sort of, like, huge waste of a moment.
I think everybody's been in a workplace where you have these, like, mandatory training sessions, which are just, like, completely useless and everybody ignores them. And sometimes they're box checking.
But if it's successful, then sure, great, right? I mean, I'm down to have players be more PR trained and players be, because that is a huge, I think, aspect for any esport, is having your players also be personalities, or at least be non-brand risk.
Yes.
Not brand risk is a very important part. I think that's a huge thing for any team of any game, Overwatch or related. You just don't want to be a brand risk, and you don't want to do some crazy shit that's gonna make it really bad to give you some heat in the kitchen. So Hopefully that gives them solutions. Hopefully this restructuring makes contenders a little bit more viable. But we're just gonna have to wait and see on it. And also, when we're speaking of things being non-viable currently.
Oh no.
The Dallas Fuel.
Don't go there.
The Dallas Fuel. The Dallas Fuel.
Where do we start?
The Dallas Fuel. I don't know where to start. Honestly, the easiest start is the end. And the end is getting 3-0'd by Vancouver Titans.
And that's
the current end.
And it's not just that they got 3-0'd by the Titans. I mean, that is the vast majority of it. But it was also the height of expectation for what fans thought was going to happen. Because coming into this, you have a signing in the form of Paintbrush, which has kind of been like a little bit, people are like, why are we signing Paintbrush? He's not really a purely mechanical upgrade over closer. You don't really know why the team is operating in that regard, but you're like, trust, faith. Paintbrush comes in, he does okay. And then you see another signing, Onigod, and without clear messaging from the organization or the team or Arrow, kind of like why we're going with these new sort of signings, people are trying to come up with why they think Onigod is being signed to the team. And I think the very clear expectation, the narrative that developed within the Overwatch community, especially the Dallas Fuel fans, is that, hey, we're moving into a double hit scan meta. You're seeing a lot of this Ashe Tracer, you're seeing a lot of this Widowmaker Tracer. It's being very, very effective. And we really need another hit scan because we don't know where AKM is right now. So that's kind of the expectation, is that we have Decay, and Doha has been looking good on some heroes, but struggling on others like Echo. So having another person who's going to be really dedicated on the hit scan, overall, you probably would struggle to make the argument that Onigod was going to be better than Doha. But as a replacement to Dota for Dota,
replace Dota with Onigod.
Yeah, but as a replacement to Doha, in order to succeed better in the double hit scan meta, that seemed reasonable. And it seemed like a good way forward, and it seemed like it was going to be an improvement to the team. The first time that we find out that Decay is not playing is when the starting roster for the Dallas Fuel Vancouver Titans game is released, and everybody goes, where's Decay? And that's where things...
ZP famously mauled it on my stream during that incident.
Yeah?
He famously mauled it. It was an intense follicle loss. Intense follicle loss. I could hear the pitter-patter of his little ZP hairs hitting the ground.
So this was a match that I actually was in the Dallas Fuel Discord for because I was going to do a watch party. I was really excited for a good old-fashioned shellac, and I just didn't realize who was going to be shellac and who. And I going further beyond this, we saw Kevster also perform. So Kevster and Onigod, both being members formerly of Team Doge, or picked up from Team Doge, which was formerly Team Envy. And both of these individuals are in Europe right now. So Onigod is Norwegian and Kevster is Swedish. So both of them are playing very high ping. And I was watching back on the replay viewer this game between the Vancouver Titans and the Dallas Fuel, specifically watching Onigod. And Onigod did the best that he could. I think that in a lot of the situations, like a lot of his pulse bomb plays, you saw the play on Junkertown where he got a 3-man pulse bomb after taking out the Immortality Field. He did something very similar, a very slick trick on the top of Hollywood. Like all of his big plays where he really popped off were like pulse bomb related. But going against Dalton, 200 ping on Tracer, any of the times where it was in the neutral or there were serious duels, he was losing. He was losing a lot of the fights against Shockwave. And in the replay viewer, it was very clearly their ping was a factor in it. So, to go from a Fuel fan's perspective, it's like, this is going to be an improvement on the team. We're adapting to the meta. This is going to be great. To be like, not only are we not playing Decay, we don't really know why. There's rumors going around from...
Well, they released a statement, right?
Yes.
There was a statement released. Not the statement from Brad.
Not the statement
from the other head coach that was not on the Dallas Fuel, talking about the player on the Dallas Fuel, which we have discussed at this point of being... a faux pas.
A faux pas.
A faux pas, I would say, to talk about another player on another roster. But Lynn, to your point, is that no one was really focused on the DPS of the Fuel for that game. Because even if Onigod was losing the neutral duels, he was playing reasonably fine otherwise. And the DPS was really, which is a historical Dallas thing, at least for this year, is the DPS has never really been the problem.
No.
It's always been, it's more of just, where is the rest of the team?
Yes.
In these moments. When I'm watching Decay hyper pound, where is my team to follow up my hyper pounding, perhaps? This is the struggle that we've always had. And then when you take out Decay, which is like the one staple, and it just collapses and this is under the weight of like, well, you know, like we want to try to get Onigod to play and blah, blah, blah. So without Decay, then your team suddenly gets 3-0'd by the Vancouver Titans, which is literally a contenders roster that is a pug team, assembled in the middle of the year and thrown into the concrete slab that is the Adamas Esports training facility. And they also have high ping members too, and they 3-0 you. And we also have to think count the budget associated with that team, and the budget probably in comparison to the fuel. You have to be asking just why. Por qué? Why? Just why must it? Why? Just why? Like just why, Jayne? Why?
It would be great to have some answers, and I wish that I could give them to you, and that's one of the reasons why we're trying to get some guests on this show, hopefully on Thursday, to get some of those answers, or at least different perspectives, but I don't think there is any kind of one answer right now. It's definitely the way that things have gone are not the ways that they should have gone, and that was the point that I was trying to make it to, is that like Onigod didn't pop off. He didn't carry, he didn't hyper carry like Decay consistently does, which is just so impressive. Like Decay is an incredible player, an absolute monster. So, you know, Onigod kind of not hard carrying a team is not reason enough for a team like the Dallas Fuel on paper to get 3-0'd by them, 100%. So it's like you have to ask what's going on with the tanks, what's going on with the supports, and if there is no kind of like one clear individual causing this problem, is it some sort of synergy problem? Is it some sort of coaching problem? Is it some sort of culture problem? And I don't think anybody knows, and that's probably just as bad as.
And it's something, and the problem with culture problems in particular is that I actually did an interview with Color Hex yesterday.
Yeah.
And we talked about, you know, Boston historically, especially this year and last year, have been, as they say in the business, poo. They have not been good.
A technical term.
A technical term. That's more of a lingo. You know, it's the lingua franca for you in chat. It's poo. But the thing is that he himself has said that almost always when you look at, like, as from a player perspective, and it's something I hardcore agree with, is that if a roster is not performing well and it has reasonably talented members or even really talented members on it, it's likely just attitude problems. It's likely just internal strife. Like 10 times out of 10.
Yeah.
Which, to be fair, which I totally agree with. I've been a pretty big proponent of that myself. I think this is there is something else happening here with the Fuel that is because, simply put, the roster should not be this bad.
Yeah, there's no amount of external analysis when we're looking at the game that Dallas Fuel plays, you know, how they play. You're not going to be finding the answers through a replay viewer unless you have comms. Like, even if you have comms, problems that show up in the scrims or between matches or between members, they're professional enough that they're probably still going to be able to play a game of Overwatch. But as external spectators, observers, and as fans of the team, like, the problem is that unless there are answers being given to you proactively by the staff or the organization, you simply have no idea of knowing what the problem is. So you hope that they know best, and you hope that they're taking steps towards making the team better. But I don't know how you can kind of view this as a player requesting a rest and having a last-minute kind of Norwegian addition to replace the piece, like the linchpin that was preventing the team from
you know, it's also,
falling apart.
It's the whole theory, too, for the Fuel. So far, every substitution that has been made has never been a substitution I felt that has drastically improved the team. It's like, I was like, why is Closer the scapegoat? Why do we need Paintbrush? It's not that Paintbrush is bad.
And we still don't have answers to that either.
You know, it's not Paintbrush is bad. It's just like, but Closer was really, I felt, never the issue.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, Onigod, sure, great, add some depth, but Decay was like never the issue there either, you know? Like, if you're going to play it at least, why would you not play? But, you know, it's just humbling when you feel like there's other parts that need to be better. And then I compare it to the Reign, which I feel like is another disappointing roster.
It is, absolutely.
But the difference is they do not get 3-0'd by the Vancouver Titans. They may lose to good teams. They may lose to upper table teams, but they don't lose to bad teams, generally. They do not lose to bad teams, the teams that are considered very lower. So I feel like that's the difference, right? Because Atlanta, they should be performing better, but they're not abysmal. So their level of talent at least is remaining consistent. If they're kind of a meh team, but they're not performing terribly. Yeah. But then Fuel, it's like that. I kind of think Fuel in many ways should not be at the same talent level as Atlanta, but should be doing a lot better. But they are performing terribly at points. Yeah. So there's only one explanation. I think it's internal strife.
Like the peak amount of hype that Dallas Fuel was getting, you know, like even Super himself, who notoriously just shit talks a lot of teams and players, said that they were more worried about the Dallas Fuel. The Dallas Fuel was looking, I don't remember if it was Super himself or somebody else, but there was definitely talk at some point where people were considering whether Dallas Fuel needed to be included in the conversation for potentially like a top 5 team, which is, you know, looking at it in this point is kind of, it's like you got to be, you're bouncing up and down the rankings so much. You're kind of looking at the Soul Dynasty sort of thing. It's like, what the hell is going on?
It's
Soul
a
Dynasty?
kangaroo market.
Yeah,
as they say.
It's Schrodinger's teams everywhere, both potentially top 5 and the worst team in the league simultaneously.
Overall,
Super said top 3.
Super said top 3.
Apparently, Chad is saying Super said top 3.
Super said top 3. But you know, at points, I honestly felt like I could never really put them top 2.
No.
Like 3, if they played at their maximum potential, and Decay ascended to the next astral realm, and he practically shone with light like some sort of some luminous beam, then yes, maybe 3rd. Maybe.
I mean, even 5. Like when we're starting to see a lot of the other teams that are like, top 5 is getting a bit crowded. Like I think previously there was a big gap between 1 and 2, but now like everyone within that top 5 is like seems to be a lot closer in skill level. So even at the peak, trying to justify them, and the people like Super and the people who were talking about them potentially being high-ranked teams were people who had more information than the casual observer did. So they were basing it off of scrim performance and a lot of internal discussion, which we can't ever judge ourselves. But yeah, it's just I think beyond the absolute catastrophe that is the Dallas Fuel getting 3-0'd and getting swept by the Vancouver Titans, the thing that makes it even worse, both as just like a casual spectator as well as a fan of the team, is that the expectations were so much higher, and we don't know why those expectations weren't met, and we don't really know if we're moving in a direction towards turning that around.
Also, chat, I know I'm glowing, by the way. Speaking of luminous beans, I know I'm glowing. It's just currently the problem is, like I said, I ran to work, and we're under very heavy lighting. It's just I'm a very shiny person, okay? But you should take this as a fact that the shinier I get, the more knowledge I provide.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just life.
That
I know I'm glowing here. But I'm also glowing with knowledge.
And you're also glowing with knowledge of the fact that spending money on teams does not equal victory.
That's an excellent segue. Everyone give a 10 out of 10 segue for Jayne on that one.
It.
Excellent segue. But because it really does lead into a bit where we saw the best game of NA was Mayhem Valiant.
Yes.
Mayhem Valiant, that was the best game in NA all weekends. The Asia region had some great games, but overall, NA had some pretty terrible games, except for Mayhem Valiant.
Yeah. Well, yes.
Except for Mayhem Valiant. That was a great game, but the interesting part about both those rosters is that they're kind of playing budget. They're both kind of a budget. Neither of those teams are really going crazy off the walls with their contracts, and we can compare that and we can contrast that to teams that are much higher budget on average, which I would say obvious examples are like Fuel, Rain, Defiant, but they're all outperforming them like crazy. And at this point, also the recent news came in, Packington is now the head coach and the GM.
Yeah, he got
much like
promotion.
Decay. He's the god. The trend of God Emperor coaches continues, where like you find a coach and they trust him so much that not only the head coach but they become a GM as well.
I think I think this is going back to you're talking about these kind of budget teams, but it's really not the fact that they're just like playing Moneyball or something. It's the person who's orchestrating the actual Moneyball. If you find somebody like Packing who can take a team that was being laughed at for being just hilariously bad, and they're like, jokes, by the way, we're awesome, and we spent like $20 and a nickel in order to accomplish that. If you have somebody who can do that, go into a team and actually light a fire under the ass of all your players, even if they are not superstars, and put them together to be more of a superstar roster, at least a contender. If you show to have the organizational chops in order to accomplish that, that is not a game-specific skill. If you can do that in Overwatch, you can do it with Valorant. You're working with people at that point, not a game. So
he's also head coach of Valorant, by the way.
Yes.
He casually mentioned that. But Packington is the head coach for 2 different teams while being a GM, which is an absurd amount of responsibility.
And it does seem like that's probably a little bit more of a transitionary role. Like the original GM of the Los Angeles Valiant has not resigned. He's still working with them. And then they're getting other people to help them out, like they have Gunba, and they picked up Hunter as well as coaches. So I think his role will probably adjust over time. It's not like you just get Packing to do everything.
But it is weird because we're not seeing those same it's not weird, but it's a trend that seems to be advancing. And now Decay was the first to do this, and they've had dubious results. The Gladiators, another team with a huge amount of budget that has had dubious results. I would say comparatively. The Packington even made like a comment where he was like, can't wait to see Gladiators try to buy all the best players in the world again or something around that nature. But still it shows the trust that the organization has in Decay to not only be a head coach, but to be a GM. Even if their results aren't great, which is not necessarily a great thing for Decay, who's in charge of all of that, if he continues to lead the ship in a direction they feel confident with, and they always know that he'll be reliable, that's something that's very valuable in esports in general, is getting a reliable actor in roles of power and those that in particular control like money distribution.
Yeah, and somebody who has a vision too.
Yes.
So talking to Packing, it becomes very clear that he knows how he wants his team to be run. And this can be, you can have this different ways. I think that you can have it where player-run teams and players just want to do their own thing, or you're trying to do the sort of thing where it sounded like John Galt did with Washington Justice, where John Galt's coaching style seemed to be, from what he mentioned in his kind of post-mortem, that he was trying to give the players the best opportunity to succeed, helping them with what they wanted to do and how they wanted to play, and give them that sort of coaching or analysis, but not really setting up a structure for like how the team is going to work, how we are going to function as an organization. I think that's something that at least people talk about Krusty doing as well. So having that person who has the vision that you can give the authority to really make these teams and make them successful, I think it's a great choice. So,
interestingly enough, this is diverged from our current topic, but just came out that PTR also just released a stats page.
Interesting.
A new PTR stats page. And they've also the game is Overwatch finally playable. They released the ability to look at your profile icons and collapse and expand all. So you can now filter out your player icons and actually do some filtering. The game is playable now. You can actually mess with your profile icons and make it real Overwatch 2, exactly. But I guess we can sort of jump a little bit since I've already brought us into the topic. Absolutely. We can jump a little bit. But overall, Florida Mayhem, both really good teams. Not spending a lot of money doing so. Packing 10 be on the rise. By Packing Stonks, by Albert Stonks, and Ian Kooky Stonks of the Florida Mayhem. But it takes us into our experimental mode changes, along with our PTR changes that we just talked about. There were some big changes.
And there's more changes that are just hitting, going live now. So if you had already watched some of the previous changes, there's even more to talk about now.
Really, I didn't see the rest of them. I just saw the I'm
looking at
things.
because they're changing the career profile changes with the statistics.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, let's start with the patch notes again for PTR.
Do you want to start with PTR?
Yeah, let's start with PTR. So the first one that I guess we'll start with is that the Junkrat changes came through. So PvP, former Overwatch streamer who's doing a lot of Valorant these days, went back to Overwatch for a bit, checked out the new Junkrat changes, and absolutely hated them, made a video about it, and apparently got noticed because the changes have been put back in. So previously they increased his mine speed so that you yeet that thing across the damn map when you throw it. But there is a trigger delay on detonating that mine. So the increased speed with the trigger delay made sure that you couldn't do certain mine jumps. So they have corrected that by... Oh, come on. Computer, please work.
Computer.
So yeah, they have the trigger delay reductions that you actually can successfully do the double mine jump. And then they also, just a nice quality of life change, they've decreased the amount of time it takes to take back control of your character after
Yeah, when you're warging the tire.
Yeah.
Your soul re-enters
tire.
It re-enters your body much faster.
That's amazing.
Which is a very important thing, I think. They also touched... now, aren't these experimental changes, not the PTR? Or do these go live as well, the PTR?
These are PTR that I'm looking at right now.
Okay. Because I thought these were experimental changes, because I was looking at those, because in the retail patch notes, it said that they were on experimental mode. But I guess these also now are on PTR, is what it seems like. So
yeah, it looks like they have two sets of changes. So
okay, so we're touching which other PTR changes are there? Because I've only seen the experimental.
That's the only PTR change listed, but I thought that one was also listed in retail.
It's listed in the experimental mode as well.
Weird. Yeah. Okay, I don't know what Blizzard's
maybe what happened is they took it from experimental and just stripped it to PTR.
Maybe
at the same time.
Okay, so we had the Junkrat changes. What were the other changes that we had on the retail patch?
So on the retail patch, but all these changes are only experimental.
Yeah.
They are not actually in live. You're not playing them currently. But we continued the war on Brigida. We have nerfed the armor pack significantly, actually. It doesn't give armor anymore, which is probably the most significant change for Brigida, because there's been a lot of synergy now with just not only Brigida being generally strong, but particularly with Dive, like Tracer and Genji, giving them an armor pack to go fight on flanks.
An Echo with an armor pack.
Or Echo. Because we saw Tracer get played a lot this weekend without Brigida anyways. I think it seems like we've sort of entered back into a Tracer era in a lot of ways and realized the power. Now that Brigida's been generally nerfed, but still gives power to her, you can sort of play both at the same time. But it doesn't give armor anymore. In addition, they increased her shield health back up to 250, but the regen rate and the cooldown once it's been destroyed has been increased.
The health for her shield or
Has been increased for her barrier shield.
Yeah, not
Yes.
for her shield.
No, her shield.
Okay, perfect.
Her shield. Her shield maiden shield is more beefy, but also takes longer to come up. So once you break it, it's gonna take a lot longer to get healthy again to come back up, which I think is actually a pretty big change because already with the thing about having 200 HP on the shield health, it was actually exceptionally easy for tracers to duel Brigittas, like good tracers, because since the shield health was so low, you could break it pretty fast. If
I mean,
the
200
Brigitte wasn't
HP is
managing.
one clip.
Very, very quickly if you don't manage it properly.
Yeah.
So I do think that's a pretty interesting change, but also now to make it beefier so it goes down slower, but it comes back up also slower, makes it a lot more imperative for Brigitte players to manage their shield even more so than before. Because if you lose the shield, you're kind of just a sitting duck to tracers. But remains to be seen where that lands Brigitte in the meta still, because you still have the opportunity to throw packs, a very long distance instantaneously to heal someone almost across the map in a ways, and go to flankers or your backline, and you still have Inspire synergy alongside with it to give health back, and you still have Rally, which is still one of the best ults. Remains to be seen how that really changes everything in her relation to the kit, and if that really deletes Brigitte, because so far we haven't done a great job of it.
Chat is saying you still get the armor if the player is not at full health.
Not at full health.
Only
That's
nerfed
true.
armor.
Only at full health. I should specify it. Not at full health. Yes. So you can't just instantly armor someone that's full health and give them the
They
armor.
have to take a point of damage.
Yes. They have to take 1 point at least.
Okay, well, a less major change if that's the case. I thought it just removed overhealing entirely, but I guess we'll have to check that out and make sure that
it's a big change for flankers, though.
Yes,
it's
it
a big
is.
change for flankers in particular, and for also keeping your Zen alive in the dive to be like the pre-armor pack, which some Brigittas did. So,
and it was that tactic was extremely powerful.
It was. So I do think that, but so far we have not really had any successful moves of removing Brigitte from the meta ever. Brigitte has been an unstoppable force that everyone has tried to remove, which I've proposed that we just redesign Overwatch to be medieval warfare simulator, and Brigitte gets a charge and target from TF2. And that's really the easiest way to help us work it. But otherwise, we have to wait and see if this will actually impact her at all, because it does change your synergies, but you can still heal people with packs instantaneously. You still have Inspire, you still have Rally, and you still have the options to bash Genjis repeatedly and make them very sad. And I don't know if that's actually going to remove from the meta, even just with that.
Yeah, it's hard to tell just based off of the the theory crafting to know whether or not it's going to remove her from the meta or not. But yeah, chat is in disagreement with whether or not there's any overhealing at all. So go test it for yourself.
It specifically said you do not get overheal from the armor pack. It has nothing to do with Rally, chat. I won't hear your lies. I won't hear your complaints because I'm shiny. Because I'm shiny and it bounces off of me. So I won't hear.
Here I am frantically trying to find the answer for chat, and I can't find it. So chat, look it up yourself. We don't know. I'm sorry. We are not the bastions of knowledge that you thought us to be. But one of the other changes, a minor change, but a pretty important change, is the dynamite cooldown being increased from 10 seconds to 12 seconds. So that is no longer... you cannot spam it nearly as much. So it's going to be a little bit slower ult rate on building up Bob, and it's also going to be affecting the supports. They're going to be getting less pressure, but also less support ultimate charge, so seems like a pretty decent change. Not going to change much about play style, moderately change their effectiveness, but other than that, I don't think it's that big of a deal. And then the other changes, so we had Junkrat, we had Ashe, Brigitte, and then one of the big one was Diva, and I think that these are actually pretty sizable.
They're interesting.
Buffs.
They push her back into the territory of Fat Tracer again.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So the changes are fusion cannon's movement penalty reduced from 50% to 40%, so she can shoot faster while moving, more headshots, tighter spread. Defense matrix, its cooldown has been reduced from 1.5 seconds to 1, so faster activation time. You can now flick it a lot easier, so easier to eat more ultimates, including May's Blizzard, Zarya's Graviton, and the final change is that an activation delay is reduced from 0.5 seconds to 0.25 seconds. So there was always that kind of big delay where if you were going after a target, you had to activate a little bit early, but now you can actually just start firing early, kill quicker, shorter time to kill. So yeah, makes her more lethal as well as more reactive.
Being able to eat ults is never bad, and being able to eat damage. Also, I know everyone says it's Fat Genji. I know the original terminology was Fat Genji, but I felt like that's kind of outdated because yes, the only similarity is that you can go to high ground, but like she does far more damage as comparable to a Tracer.
Tracer's ult is also a bomb.
And it's a big bomb.
It's a big bomb.
You know, I feel like Fat Tracer is just more apt to how she functions than Fat Genji. But I do understand there's like a mix.
Fat Echo.
Fat Echo.
Now we're just fat
no,
Roadhog.
I don't think
I can't.
We can't just add them all.
Yeah. And then so the other change that we won't have a graphic prepared for you, unfortunately, but there were also some stats changes. So the stats changes primarily are then going to be off of the profile. So your profile now has a different set of stats showing playtime and ranks. It looks pretty slick. You can find it. It's on new. It was submitted by Reddit or submitted to Reddit, and then Andy GMB. If you follow him on Twitter, he also tweeted out a GIF of those changes. If you just wanted a visual look-see instead of having to open up the client yourself, because that seems like way too much effort.
Yeah, who wants to do that?
Who wants to actually open the client?
Especially if you have two-factor authentication or things like that. Normal body size diva. People are just I can't read Pog. You know, sometimes you look at the chat and it's like glimpsing into the abyss.
Yeah, it's
I'm glad we've transferred this into the studio format, so all the money that was spent to create this excellent studio for us, we can read I Can't Read Pog live with all of our broadcast equipment. This is what was all
interactive entertainment.
It was all worth it, Envy. The investment's paying off. Don't worry. So that was the PTR and the experimental changes, because once again, experimental is experimental. That does not mean it's going to live necessarily. It could always be changed. We've seen it changed in the past, so we'll have to keep an eye on it. I think overall, the changes are pretty positive for the most part.
Yeah, I think so.
I would like to see how they actually. You have to get your hands on them and see how they play to really see like what does this mean. But it's nice to bring down how strong Brigitte synergy is with her packs, making D.Va more viable, so you can sort of get around the strength of double shield currently is always good.
You know, they're taking the Genji approach to D.Va, where it's like D.Va is super strong. And one of the things that we've talked about many times before is the fact that D.Va doesn't really have a replacement for her in the meta. You know, you can have, with the shields, you can like swap them out with this. Like there's places where you want to run the Orisa, places where you want to run the Reinhardt, whether you're poking or rushing or things like that. But it's like, if you need defense matrix or you need high ground contest, like you play D.Va. You know, unless you can now put Sigma in there, but Sigma has no high ground mobility outside of the actual flux. You know, so it's kind of like Bastion. Like, yeah, I guess you have a little bit of high ground if you use your ultimate to rocket jump on top. It's the same sort of situation, but just having a 4-second cooldown where you can be like, I'm the high ground. No, I'm not. No, I'm on your backline. No,
it's really
I'm not.
good.
It's really strong. So, you know, I think that the proper step probably would have been to reduce the power of shields, especially double shields, even more, rather than buffing D.Va to the point where she comes back into the meta and makes all the DPS lives hell. Like,
and then also, what happens if later down the line they also nerf shield power too, and now D.Va is just unstoppable? Force,
yeah, like
right?
we are in a meta finally where I think that DPS have the highest carry potential that they have had for literal years.
Currently?
Yeah.
I would say now that, particularly that BAP Zen is so popular, there's just so much damage flying through that it's very DPS-centric at times.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I think that DPS have the highest carry potential that they have had in Overwatch for a long time. And if they make this change to D.Va, and then they just, like, nerf double shields a little bit, like, you're going to have...
But that's not the Blizzard way. That's not the Blizzard way.
That is not
the Blizzard way. Is to pretend that all of our changes happen in a vacuum and they don't affect anything else. So we are not going to nerf shield. We are, in fact, going to buff D.Va. And then eventually, when shield is nerfed more, D.Va will resurge to the fore like some sort of, like a cryptid. Like, what are the big mega monsters from Godzilla called? They're called, like...
Kaijus.
Kaijus, you know? Yep. That's going to be D.Va. I'm glad everyone has their Godzilla terminology down, but that's going to be D.Va surging from the waters to consume everybody with her enhanced defense matrix, because we just ignore the problem until the meta's changed.
Playing something straight out of a Lovecraftian horror.
Nerfing shields make double shield more important, though. See, you say that.
You say that.
But
you would be wrong.
Because also, you could just, with D.Va buffed, or just with D.Va in general, you can always change your position to go back towards a D.Va-centric meta, or to play a dive-centric meta, obviously. Like, it doesn't inherently mean that double shield is always more powerful because of it. Now, obviously, that doesn't mean that, I don't think either of us are advocating that we only touch shields.
Yeah.
There would be ideally balance, holistic balance. Like, we change all of these variables about why we're sort of where we're at. Just double shields, our main complaint is why buff D.Va, when you could also just nerf double shields and then nerf everything else.
And the fact that, you know, probably... how many times have we been saying this, that the next hero has to, like, if you're ever going to be releasing a new tank hero, like, release a competitor to D.Va. Something who can serve that role.
Something that has a similar overlap. Anything. They never do it.
No.
Never do it. Well,
I mean, D.Va's a good character design, but she's in just like this such a solidified niche and so powerful. I mean, when she's overtuned, she absolutely controls the meta. You know, there was like, how long was D.Va in the meta where people were so unsure of what Overwatch would even look like without her?
well, I mean, I think there was a prediction that without D.Va, we would land into like DPS being like these unbelievable cannons that fire upon
Yeah.
you, and that's sort of where we got into. And why with Double Shield is that like we just need to put as many barriers between us and the people shooting at us as possible, because we don't have someone to get in their face anymore, because it's not sort of how the meta has shifted quite as much. And I do think that it's right in some ways when we look at where current state of like how tank gameplay in particular is. Though there are some, we're seeing some more hog and ball torture, as it's called. Some more of those.
I can't believe we've named the meta that.
Hog and ball?
Hog
Well,
and Ball.
that's the comp name, not the meta name yet. Once we move into a
the
meta,
comp
it'll be
name.
a hog
I
and
can't
ball
believe we named
era.
the comp Hog and Ball Torture.
If we move into a hog and ball meta, it would be a hog and ball era.
Is that better?
An epic.
I can't even tell if that's better or worse.
I think that'd be much better.
That'd be much better. Just an era of hogs and balls.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I know where you're.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. We have to get what the people want. The gotchis.
We don't kink shame here on Contested.
That's exactly what we need. But there has been some interesting tank choices as we've advanced and changed things a bit, but still overwhelmingly Double Shield is kind of the standard for how teams are playing. And it's sort of kind of the vacuum of power of D.Va, you know? D.Va was the brutal dictator.
Yes.
The brutal meta dictator holding it all down.
Used to be Reinhardt, and then it was Lucio, and D.Va kind of existed through both of those the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
She's like an alligator. They've existed for a really long time, unchanged for the most part. They're like nature's perfect killing machines.
You know what else has existed for a very long time?
Okay, I want to hear
I have
it.
no idea where I'm going with
All
this.
right, let's hear it. Is there a point at the end of this?
China.
Okay, and
We have teams from China
we do.
who competed last weekend.
That is correct.
Best segue I've ever done.
So I'm assuming this is leading in. I'm assuming this is leading into our Spark topic.
It is.
That's what this is. So this
I'm done.
this is leading into our Spark topic, because we had put sort of a beacon onto the Spark heading into the weekend of, I felt they were very powerful. They picked up QOQ. Yep, QOQ. I'm not gonna say the phonetic version of that on the broadcast, because I don't. Once again, we're always experimenting with the lines, but don't want to go that. Yeah. You really loved that segue.
Yeah.
You really loved it. You're having a good time over there.
That was by far, and Chad agrees with me. That was by far my best segue that I've ever done. But yeah, I really enjoyed. I watched both the Sparks game back, and QOQ, he looked really good. And this is especially compared to Mandu, was another guy I was excited to hear. So everyone was Mandu. Yeah, he didn't look that great.
New York in general, like they had some meh moments.
Yeah.
But the game was really good though.
Yeah, QOQ. I think that Gargoyle is probably the individual that I look to for where I'm looking at like the the quintessential, like really strong Sigma player, and I think that he's done some fantastic work for.
That's really funny, because earlier on in the season, not us, mind you, because we're really good
always
we're awesome
we're
at
awesome.
what we do.
We're
but other
awesome.
people said like Gargoyle, wash Sigma, no Sigma for Gargoyle, and I was like wrong. Wrong.
And then we're gonna keep.
I'm not supposed to. I'm not supposed to slam it.
That blows your guys'
sorry,
eardrums out when you slap the table.
I'm not supposed to slam the desk. I know. I have to get
But yeah,
Pavlovian
I
less
think
trained
Gargoyle
for
is
that.
playing like really well. And QOQ reminds me of that Gargoyle type of player. So him plus Architect, like the two of them, really pushed the Spark to just look fantastic. I was kind of disappointed that they lost to the Charge, because I felt like Spark was the better team. Like Architect really was playing much better on the Tracer than Aileen was. Aileen felt like he was struggling to keep up. Happy, however, Happy's an absolute monster on the Widowmaker, and he was outclassing Godspeed to some extent, but it didn't really feel like it was to the level where Charge, I don't want to say deserved the victory, because you don't deserve anything, wins or losses. But yeah, it's like Spark definitely had the opportunity to take that one off of the Charge. And, it's like, I don't think that they were that far behind. A lot of it came down to the duels. A lot of the fights, especially on those Ilios maps where they are such DPS-centric, DPS-focused, just a couple of things went wrong here and there, and Charge managed to take the series. But, like, really close teams in terms of how well they were performing. And that is surprising, I think, especially considering, like, the Charge are now 5th in the ranking, and the Spark themselves even with their performance this weekend, which they lost 1-1-1, but they're ninth.
They had a rocky start.
Yeah, they did.
Is the thing. They had a rocky start, and also it just shows the parity of the Asia region in general, which is why I rate it very highly.
Yes.
Still, I think people don't understand that like the parity is so insane for that region currently, aside from maybe Chengdu
and London.
And even London, though, is out of resurgence. They had a great game. They actually had their last game of that weekend, I believe they played, it was also New York.
Yeah, it was 3-1.
Yeah, but they could have gone to map 5. It was almost really close to the map 5.
Okay.
Almost.
I did not watch that
game.
game.
It was almost a map 5. And I do think London, which is another roster, that is the definition of budget, where you sell your literal championship team.
And you try and sell the actual franchise itself.
Yeah, and now we have a roster that is pretty much built from legitimately tier 3 players. Like players that were not even necessarily Korean contenders players. They do have some very notable names like Glister and J-Mac and Bernard, but for the most part, it's kind of like just out of nowhere type of rosters. So I do think that the Asia region is really, really strong. Their performance and how close it is a really good thing as a whole, and I do like that it's caught up a bit. And you said people sleep on Chengdu. I've always slept on Chengdu. I will sleep on Chengdu forever, okay? I'm going to bring it back to the bed segment, okay? You're going to watch me get into the bed, and that bed's name is going to be Chengdu, and I'm going to sleep on it. I'm going to sleep on Chengdu forever. Chengdu is too wacky. It is too weird. I simply will not acknowledge that Chengdu is currently that good because they just keep doing weird crap all the time.
Yeah.
They're just not fundamentally good at Overwatch because their team is Bizarro Land. And I won't accept it. I won't
Chengdu Hunters, like one of their victories actually does come against Shanghai Dragons. So maybe Shanghai Dragons' kryptonite is just the Chengdu Hunters.
I mean, it's possible.
Yeah.
I think Chengdu can always throw something into the mix.
They can always do something weird. But
they always do something really weird, but I just can't see the roster and the way that they currently coach it and like their organization winning consistently ever. I just can't. Not in its current state.
Yeah, but like you bring up with the parity of the Asian region, it's really a lot of teams very even. Like we saw such intense games across a multiple number of teams this weekend, and despite them being so close and seemingly quite good at Overwatch, I still don't know exactly where to fit them in to the North American region comparatively.
Like the Asia region or just Chengdu in general?
The Asia region,
okay,
as a whole. So
we just gotta guess. Gotta throw that out against the wall.
Yeah, because this is something that actually in the mailbag I got a little bit of flame for. So as Jose said, Jayne not acknowledging the Shanghai Dragons when he is introducing New York as a top team like Philly and San Francisco is a little disrespectful. I know he's super high on them after beating an inconsistent Seoul team, which wasn't as much as a stomp as he implied, but I'm pretty sure New York need to prove that they're at least as good as Shanghai before comparing them to Philly and San Francisco. Great point. However, I didn't say that I believe New York at that moment was going to be like the best team. I think that they had the potential to become. It's when I was talking about investing in New York, you gotta buy low, sell high.
When the climb is still happening.
When the climb is still happening.
Before they moon.
Yeah.
Before they moon, exactly. I was reading that same question, and I realized right below that there was something called KRT. Someone named KRT said, a Avast headset basically only be extended on one side makes this unwatchable. What? Has that been a problem? Has my headset been on one side when we were at home? I'm asking our producer. Has that been a thing?
It's one of those things I can't unsee it now.
It's really? Yes? Everyone's saying yes, it was? I've never received said feedback. This is news to Shiny Avast, to new Shiny Avast.
What does it mean extend on one side only?
I don't know. What is that? I don't even know what that exactly means.
I mean,
maybe it's like the clip is like pulled down further on one side.
If you do that, you need to get out. And
I don't know. I didn't know about it. I had no idea.
Asymmetric headset users?
I didn't know it was asymmetric.
I don't think I can be friends with you anymore.
I honestly have no clue. But this is news to me. So KRT, listen, I've fixed this right off the bat because I don't wear a headset anymore because we're in the studio. I'm not wearing a headset.
Couldn't figure out a headset. Too complicated.
It is. That's how I've done most things in my life, Jayne. Okay, finances. Don't need it.
Don't give me IRS.
Playing in Overwatch League. Bench player for me.
Just collecting a bag.
Yeah, exactly.
Not even playing a game.
Joining the Overwatch League. Gonna make contested with Envy. You just gotta sometimes you gotta know when to hold them, know when to fold them.
Old Avast would have had his headset symmetric.
That's asymmetric Andy, of course. Of course. What was our other? Have we hit all of our top? Are we sort of in the mailbag situation?
We are in the mailbag
We're
situation. We managed to hit all our topics, even with the addition of the stuff that we talked about at the very start. So,
well, I want to add a final point though before we move on. Let's keep keep staying big on Spark. I'm very confident Spark.
Yes.
Spark,
Yeah.
Because Spark started out really slow last year too,
They
and
did.
really well.
I mean,
the
same thing
season.
happened with the Charge as well, though. They
Yeah.
started out really slow, and then they
But
had...
Charge even still has, I think, had pretty decent this year. you
Yes,
know?
they have. I think Krong and Rio,
Mhm.
they don't get a lot of talk for being like really good players, but
Which is crazy.
which is crazy.
Which is crazy.
Like,
Rio
I
in
was
particular, I've always felt pretty good about Rio.
like
as a
Krong
tank player.
impressed me, and I think that maybe it's not because they don't make so many flashy plays, but they are consistent and consistently good. Like not just like good, like good. Intonation difference.
Yeah.
Important intonation
It is.
difference. They are good.
It's the power of language.
Consistently. So, it's like if I was going to say, like, point out the reasons why the Charge really did manage to beat the Spark, despite the Spark having a lot more kind of explosive and notable moments, it was because their tank line was just so consistent. And Happy just was that little bit better than Godsby. But other than that, like, those teams were really close. They're really good. I want to see them play against Shanghai. I want to see them play against the North American teams. Like
I really want to see Charge and Spark and Shanghai and really every team. I really want to see international competition so
me too.
badly.
Like, it's so hard to determine relative strengths.
It is.
It's it'll be fun once we actually start seeing those cross ones. Those are ones where if people can accurately predict those ones, I will bow down and worship you because wow, it's like even this comment with Jose where he's talking about it was certainly an oversight for me not to mention the Shanghai Dragons as one of the best teams in the league. I definitely.
But
think
also, I felt like your point at the time was you were talking about teams on the rise and New York was on the rise.
Yes.
That's fair. You know what? You're nitpicky and biased. Jayne wins. Bye bye. I quote Donkey.
referees on my side. I've bought him out. Perfect.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
I win. Bye bye. But the purpose there of that was I just really excited to see those teams play. Overall, Krong and Rio are currently underrated tank
Yes,
line. Spark on the rise.
Those would be
we did have
more
Shock. We did
investments.
technically have Shock on our graphic, and we're supposed to talk about Shock. So we might as well do like a really we'll just do a zip through it because we wanted to sort of axe it. But I just want to say like as one line, a single line.
Oh my God, they're scary.
They're scary. They're scary. That's it. That's the line.
That's the entire Shock segment.
That's the line. That we're planning to talk a little bit more of them for Thursday's episode.
Yeah.
But just know that they are scary and they make me scared. I have fear. Of
Do they
Shock.
make you hide under your bed?
They do. After I rest in the Chengdu bed, I hide beneath it, and I go under the bed.
Okay, what's our mailbag for this week?
Well, we've talked about my disheveled appearance,
Yes.
and my shiny appearance,
Yes.
and anything.
Oh,
making
we
fun of
have.
my
We
appearance.
even planned it out this week.
Yeah, we did. We planned out the segment this week actually, but what was it? It was Armchair GM.
Yes.
Armchair GM.
RJGM.
We're getting increasingly more loopy.
See, this is why we can't make fun of people for poor language.
That's true. Well, our CTA, as it's colloquially known, as the acronym, our call to action, our mailbag question for you guys is: if you were to be an armchair GM for a day, just for a day though, that's all we're allowing you to be. Pick teams that you would like to fix. What would you do? Struggling teams. I mean, I would honestly, I'll leave it open enough.
I mean, what are you gonna do? I'm gonna become the GM of Shock and do nothing.
No,
I
you have to
win.
do something. If you're going to join Shock, you have to do something. If you want to be the Shock GM, you must make a move of some sort.
Yeah.
But obviously, struggling teams are better. Like teams like Gladiators, Justice, Titans, maybe.
I mean,
but
Titans pop it off.
The Fuel,
Titans-
the Fuel.
The Fuel?
Like if you want to be an armchair GM, make some moves and to submit them to us. If you're in my Discord, you can throw them in my contested, my mailbag questions channel. We have obviously the YouTube comments. We check there. We have all those are the main avenues I would say to submit your mailbag responses. But we want to hear what you would do as a GM for a day from ideally struggling teams, but it could be a good team if you have a good move.
Yeah, if you think that you could do a better job managing Shock than the GM over there. Who's the GM for Shock? Why am I blanking?
I wanted to say it was just Justin maybe, but I think he moved. Is it Derek? Maybe Derek Trong. It might be Derek Trong now.
Chat.
I have to think. I think it's Derek, but it used to be Justin. But that's not the point. That's not the point. Whatever. I can't remember their
I
names.
just expected you to have that off the tip of your tongue.
It's one of those two names.
It's one of those two
It's
names.
one of those
them.
two names. I'm fairly certain. It's one of those two names. Don't quote me on that.
Okay.
Don't quote me on that. Thug Nasty? No, I don't think Thug Nasty is the name of the GM for the Shock. I don't believe so. I don't quite think that Thug Nasty is the name of it. But that is what we want you guys to answer for us for the mailbag is how are you going to fix the struggling teams as a GM, prestigious position, or even one of the good teams if you have one really good roster move to make them better, and submit them in my Discord and the YouTube comments, shout them from the heavens into the ionosphere, and it will echo back to my ears.
That's how science works.
That's exactly how science works. That's exactly right.
Well, thank you for watching. This was your Tuesday episode of Contested. We'll be back Thursday at 5 p.m. Central, unless we're not, in which case we'll let you know. We're going to try and organize to have a guest on for our Thursday show, give us more insight onto either the shock or the fuel, depending on who accepts our invite. So look forward to that. We're back in the studio. We get to do all the fun stuff we've been waiting to do for a long time. So to everybody watching on Twitch, YouTube, and Twitter, I hope you guys enjoyed. And if you
actually Thug Nasty.
Is it actually Thug Nasty? You weren't just being baited?
I'm ready to check. Let's close it out. I don't want to talk about Thug Nasty.
Well, we're gonna invite Thug Nasty on the show this Thursday.
Thug Nasty's coming on. We'll get Thug Nasty.
We'll get Thug Nasty. Heck. Okay. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, I hope you enjoyed whatever day it is that you decided to listen to our episode. I'm Jayne. This is Avast, and you have watched Contested.